Kevin Welman from FleishmanHillard, a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Public relations, we seem to have seen the discipline grow in stature over the past couple of years. First of all, do you agree with that? And second of all, why?
Without question, I do agree with that. I think we've moved into an age of a more uncontrolled media. Because several things have contributed towards that. I think there have been more and more media outlets that have contributed towards that. The age of sensationalistic type reporting arriving in South Africa with certain newspapers having started in the last couple of years, and then of course social media. So people want to follow who they want to follow. So engaging in that uncontrolled conversation has always been the skill of public relations people and of external communicators. So I think with that as a backdrop, I do think the age of PR has dawned.
And with that, the rules have dramatically changed.
Oh, no question. Yeah, the rules have changed. But I think companies and individuals, I suppose, that have got a solid external communication strategy, they know what they stand for, how they stand for it, and they tell their stories within that framework, will always survive and will always thrive.
I want to talk to you about how the change in strategic approach has happened over the past couple of years. But is it fair to say that these days a brand cannot afford not to have a PR strategy?
I believe
you're navigating in dangerous waters if you don't.
I think even if it's not a formal strategy, most people know what they want to stand for. But I think it's just naive to think that a major company would not have a PR strategy. And let's just take that a slight step back. Knowing what you stand for, knowing what you want people to believe about your brand, and knowing how you're going to try and make them believe those things, essentially your action plan. That is a strategy. I mean, it's really simplistic. Everybody has that, even if it's not on paper sometimes, but you should. I mean, you really should have a really robust communication strategy.
Fair point, but in this age of media volatility, that timeline and that horizon is adjusted all the time and it becomes narrower and narrower. More difficult, surely, to set in stone a proper strategy. It can change hour by hour.
No doubt. But if you don't have a strategy, imagine then trying to navigate. I mean, it's that simple. If you don't know what you want to be communicating, and you don't know who should be communicating it, imagine what happens in a time of a crisis or in a difficult time. You are moving into a time where you'll just be uncertain of what you're trying to achieve as a brand, and you'll be left behind.
So, company calls you in, client calls you in. Where do you start? How do you start developing this? But so often the reputation of PR companies is you spend a lot of time doing the strategy and too little time implementing it.
I think there are certainly two aspects to it: the strategic build of your strategy and then the implementation of your strategy. I'm just going to go through the strategy formulation just very, very quickly, if I may. First of all, just understand what the company is trying to achieve, their strategic imperatives, their business vision, etc. That's one. Understand what people currently think of that company, understand what the management wants people to think of the company, and bridge that gap. So essentially formulate your messaging. Truly understand their target audience. Really understand who they're trying to communicate with so that your communications program makes sense. Understand your effective communications channels. In some instances it's the media, some instances it's more on the social side, for instance. Build your action plan and then measure it. So if you get that right, you'll quite easily build a plan for a company.
Given the penetration, the multiplicity of social media platforms that we see, do brands truly understand, one, the power of social media and perhaps how to engage with it and sometimes confront it?
No doubt, there's a huge upswing in this space. I think brands are certainly understanding social to a much greater degree. Individuals within brands are understanding social to a much greater degree as well. But social can't exist in isolation. It's got to exist in an environment where there's an external comms strategy, where there's a robust internal comms strategy, where your staff know what you're thinking, where there's a robust advertising strategy, etc. So it's just another component. It's just another channel. It is certainly not the be-all and end-all. I will look long and hard to try to find a social or a social program that has worked in isolation and has been unbelievably effective.
Within the organization itself, does this sit with a marketing director or does this sit with a chief executive?
With both. I mean, your marketing department is there for a reason, to market the company. Your CEO and your CEO are there for a reason as well, to manage the company,
and guard
the brand, or to build the brand and guard the brand against anything. So if the relationship is really good between the two of them, and if there's agencies involved and the relationship with that structure with the agencies is really robust, it will work.
The single biggest challenge facing your profession, and it's been there for forever, certainly for as long as I've been reporting this industry, is measurement. Return on investment. You have still not been able to prove your value, even though the value exists.
Absolutely. Measurement is such a topic for me. I mean, for many years we've reported back in AVE values, effectively what would the cost of the space have been if you had bought it. It's a nonsense reporting structure, but they still exist. I'm currently one of the judges on the PRISM Awards, the Public Relations Institute, and the level of measurement has become so much more sophisticated, and it's so encouraging to see. On the social side, people are looking at the impact, followers, likes, those types of things, but tone and sentiment and how far sort of a social media conversation is moving. On the traditional measurement side, it is so much more closely aligned to business objectives and in sales in some instances. So it's encouraging, but yes, measurement remains a massive task for us.
Very quickly and in conclusion, you call for the need for agency networks hubbed out of South Africa. What does that mean?
The first thing, we are certainly seeing it more and more, that South African agencies need an African network. That's really what I mean by that. A network of firms, if not owned by you or that you have an equity stake in or whatever it might be, to take a client's brand across Africa. I mean, for so long, South Africa has been seen as a springboard into Africa, and PR firms need to be doing exactly the same. They need to be able to service their clients here and take their strategies onto the continent, whatever markets companies go into, be it the traditional, the Kenyas, the Nigerias, the Angolas, the big markets, or even the smaller markets.
Are we parachuting skills in, or does the skill exist within those markets?
No question. The skills do exist. They do need to be developed, and more skills need to come in. So a mixture of all of that. Just FleishmanHillard, for instance, we have a robust network of agencies across the continent. We get together once a year, and we have done this for the last 5 or 6 years, where we do training. But it's not just the South African agency that sits them down and says, this is how you will do it. They train us, we train them, we share case studies. A Kenyan view to a social network very different to ours. A Nigerian view to, say, Twitter, very different to ours. So again, it's a learning environment where we've all got to learn from each other.
Kevin Welman, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.